Hello everybody! Today I'm making a small video on how to upgrade SonarQube Community Edition to the latest version on a Windows machine. This is Stef from Samayas and welcome to my channel. So for those of you who don't know SonarQube, SonarQube is an open source platform developed by Sonar that is used to inspect the quality of your source code. It performs static analysis to detect bugs, vulnerabilities, code smells in your codebase. And it provides detailed dashboards with metrics, trends and actionable items into that code. I've been using the Community Edition of SonarQube for a couple of years now. And it has helped me over the years to fine-tune my code and to find some bugs here and there. However, it's a Java application. And even after all those years, they still don't have a valid Windows setup, even though it runs on Windows with some tweaks. Every time I need to upgrade to the latest version, I have some issues with upgrading. So this time I decided to make a video on it to share and for future reference for myself. In this version, I'll be upgrading version 10.7 to the newer 2025.7. Let's dig in. So as you can see, when connecting to my SonarQube website, it clearly shows my current version is no longer active and I need to upgrade. Now my SonarQube is installed on a Windows server and not on a Linux or on Docker. And as you can see, it's installed as a Windows service. And so the way the process goes is you need to uninstall this version and you need to reinstall a new service with a new version, which is quite painful. If we go to the SonarQube website and we go to the documentation, the first thing it points to is, well, you just download the zip file. You have to make sure that you have Java version 17 or 21 in your system. You create a directory somewhere and you just run the start Sonar. However, that's a manual process that each time that your server reboots, you need to manually run and you have a command line running somewhere. So that's not really an option. However, somewhere hidden down below, there is a section now about starting and stopping as a Windows service. So I need to go to the SonarQube home directory, to the bin directory, to the Windows x86 64, and I need to call Sonar service and I need to uninstall or reinstall. So the first thing I'll do, I'll go to the Sonar source website and I'll download the latest version. I go to downloads and I download the Community Build Edition. I just click download only and I have a downloaded version. And so now on one side I have my downloaded zip file of the latest version. On the other side I have the old version. And for now I've installed SonarQube directly in the root directory and the previous directory was called SonarQube 10.7, which was version 10.7, and now they switched to a new format and I'll call it 25.7. So I'll just copy the content of what's in the zip file and so now we're ready to install, right? Well, there's no setup, there's no badge, nothing. So let's first uninstall the old version. So now, as per documentation, I need to go to my Sonar home directory, which is SonarQube 10.7 in the bin directory and in the Windows x86 64 directory. And there I need to call Sonar service. I need to give the instruction uninstall. So let's do that. And my service should be successfully uninstalled. So let's verify. If I now refresh, well, it's still running, but it's disabled. So that means if I want to continue, I need to reboot in order to have it removed. So let's do that. And as you can see, after a clean reboot, SonarQube is gone. So now that we have uninstalled the previous version, we could just go to the new version 25.7 and execute in the bin Windows directory the Sonar service install command, right? Well, not exactly. 95% of all your configuration is installed on a database server, and that's not the issue. However, on a normal Windows application, you have a setup process and all the old settings are migrated to new ones. However, here we're just working with some files. and we unzipped a new version completely in a separate directory, which has no state of what your SQL Server or other settings are. So we need to redo the whole configuration from scratch. And that configuration is located under the config Sonar property. In the best case scenario, you might just copy over the previous file from the previous install version and hope everything works. However, if you haven't read extensively the whole documentation about all property settings and potential changes between the previous version and this version, you might have some issue. So the best thing is to look at them one by one and recopy over all the settings which you require and leave eventual new properties or other default properties to what they are. And that's quite cumbersome every time and quite error prone. So the first two settings you absolutely need to have is the username and password, which how SonarQube connects to your database. So you need to uncomment those two lines and enter the username and the password. Please don't copy my password. So in my scenario, as you can see, you have the possibility for an embedded database, an Oracle database, a PostgreSQL database, a Microsoft SQL Server database, and in my scenario, it's a Microsoft SQL Server database. Next, depending on the number of users, etc., you can play with connection pooling settings. I don't touch it. Next, we have web server settings where we could tweak certain things. You can specify on what IP address it is listening if needed, on what port if you want to change that. You can have a number of other settings like minimum number of threads, accept count, keep alive, etc. I leave them by default. You can also configure SSO, which for now I have not configured, or LDAP configuration. You can configure specific compute engines if you want to. I have never touched it. And you could use a specific Elasticsearch, separate from the one which is out of the box, if you need to. And if you don't want your server to dial home, you could disable the auto update. And finally, you can play around with some logging settings if you need to. This can be handy if your setup doesn't start up. And then finally, there's a number of other settings which you can tweak if you need to. So now that my database username, password and SQL connections are set, I can try to install it. So something over the years that I have learned with SonarQube is before installing it as a service is to try to see if it first starts up. So let's do that. And this might take a while. And so it seems to be started. However, it's asking me to update the database settings and to browse to setup. So now let's go to my SonarQube website and let's do the setup command. And it's going to ask for a database update, which I'll do. And so now my database is up to date and SonarQube is starting. So now let's stop SonarQube and install it as a service. And so now it should be installed as a service. Let's verify that. And as we can see, we have SonarQube and we can start it again. And so we have successfully migrated SonarQube to the latest version. And now we can safely remove the old version just by deleting the files. So I just need to delete the old directory and the cleanup is done. So I hope this video helps other upgrading SonarQube on Windows. If you guys enjoy this content, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel and hit the bell sign, or leave a comment down below.